drive is an incredible tool, but it's a terrible operating system. If you don't have that ability to step back, you can win the day, but lose the game. When drive is your operating system, everything feels like it needs attention. Everything feels urgent, even things that are not urgent. You are in this constant state of optimization, but you're optimizing the problems that are right in front of you. I don't remember what the big issue was that we were briefing him on. I have no recollection of it, but I've never forgotten what I missed out on. This is episode 445 of the Brilliant Balance podcast. Today, we're talking about the hidden costs of drive. So I'm going to open today with a story. It's not one I'm particularly proud of, but I'm going to tell it. And it goes back a number of years ago to a time when one of my closest friends did something that I still think about a lot. She and her husband, they were pretty newly married, took a year, like an entire year, and they traveled around the world. We actually had another friend who had done this. I think they were inspired by the idea, and they both quit their jobs and took a year to travel. No office, right? No agenda. I mean, they had a rough plan of where they were going in the world, but they really took it one day at a time, just like them and whatever was in front of them for the day. And I was so in awe that they would do this. Like, this was something I could not imagine doing, taking putting a 1-year hiatus in my career progression. And when they came back, they came to stay with us. And it was a long weekend. It was just the four of us. And I was so happy she was there. Genuinely, I was delighted that I was going to get to spend time hearing about the trip and hosting them in our home. And I spent most of that weekend in my home office because I had a global vice president flying in from the UK in my very fancy job the following week. And I was responsible for a major briefing, like a presentation that we had to give. And I kept telling myself, it's just going to take 1 more hour. I just need 1 more hour. Let me get through this section. I'll be out, before dinner. And I look back on that weekend and I feel not great about it. That's like an understatement, right? Because what I know now that I just didn't fully understand then is that I didn't have an off switch. I didn't know how to say, this weekend is for something else, right? This weekend is special. It's dedicated to these people that I love who've taken time to come and visit me. I didn't know how to actually put the work down, not just move it over to the edge of the desk where I could still see it, And that's what we're talking about today. I'm going to talk today about drive and the hidden costs of drive. Not drive itself, because actually I am absolutely not here to talk you out of your ambition. I think having ambition and having drive are very powerful traits. I love those traits in myself. I love that you have them in you. I am wildly ambitious, right? My family would confirm this with enthusiasm, right? And it's something that I take a lot of pride in, but I want today to talk about what happens when that drive stops being something that you use with purpose and it starts being something that runs you. Because there is a difference, and I've had to learn it, and I'm not always great at it even today. And I think a lot of women who are living at the peak of life complexity are living that difference without really having a name for it. There's kind of an invisible line. So I want to paint a picture of what it can look like from the outside. Certainly the story I just told is a great example, because sometimes it's a little easier to see this in someone else than it is to see it in yourself. So crossing that invisible line, you sort of know it when you see it. Think of someone that you know that you would call driven, somebody in your personal life. She has probably accomplished extraordinary things, right? And people talk about those accomplishments. Maybe she made partner at a big firm. Maybe she's written a book. Maybe she's run 20 marathons. Maybe she started a community foundation. Maybe she did all of those things in one person. And honestly, you start to lose count of all the things that she's doing, and you're not even sure you're supposed to admire it anymore because it's starting to make you a little tired just to watch it. That's an example. Or maybe Maybe it's someone like the mom who you're registering your kid for kindergarten, and she comes in with a full portfolio of their preschool accomplishments for the kindergarten application, at a school where all you need to do is basically register. That, she's the mom who's got the girls in elaborate braids for every school occasion and is signing up for every extra activity, and is like, there's this sense that there is a force operating underneath everything she does that she genuinely does not know how to stop, right? These women start off getting our admiration. They're like, they've accomplished a lot. And I want to be clear that I'm not devaluing accomplishment, right? I'm also not devaluing drive and ambition. I think we all probably see a little bit of ourselves in those pictures. Most driven, ambitious women do. But it's where this crosses over from being a gift to being something else that we want to find the edge of. So the first thing is that drive is a gift. It genuinely is. We have to start here. Like, if you are somebody who was born with this sort of innate ability to go after something, be grateful for that. I'm so grateful that that is innate in me. It's the thing that takes a vision, a dream that you have for your life, for your career, for your family, for your business, and turns it into an action plan. It's what helps you get started when getting started is hard. I think it's what helps you persist when things get difficult. Like, that grit is sourced from drive. When you hit friction, when other people might give up or quit. I think drive is something that maybe gives you the willingness to take on things that other people would find really difficult. It's kind of Elle Woods energy. Like, it's hard. Drive is what says do it anyway. And that energy, that relentless, take it on, keep going energy is part of what helps us build careers and businesses and financial freedom and meaningful impact, right? So I don't want anyone to give that up, but here's what I've come to understand. Drive is an incredible tool, but it's a terrible operating system, right? A tool knows when to be put down. But an operating system is running everything. Like, you take a tool out, you use it, and then you put it away. But the operating system is underneath. It's running in the background all the time, whether you want it to or not. And when drive becomes your operating system, then it can start to override signals that you probably should be paying attention to. It says keep going when your body says rest, right? It says one more thing when you have a kid standing at the kitchen counter waiting for you to notice them. It says, hey, this matters, do it now, when really it's just the system doing what the system does. So I want to talk about 3 very clear costs that I see of drive when it goes into like overdrive, right? Maybe that's what I should have called this episode. When drive goes into overdrive, that there's sort of 3 things that quietly get taken from you when drive is running unchecked. Okay. And before I get into those, I'm going to just plant a little seed here that I'm going to come back to at the end of the episode, because while knowing these costs is important, right? Being able to kind of have awareness of them, awareness is just the first step. Awareness alone doesn't change patterns that are deeply wired. And if you have this particular pattern, I promise you it's deeply wired. Right? What I'm doing in the coaching circle that I introduced last week is designed to actually shift these patterns into more useful ones. And so I want to connect those dots for you and help you see how awareness is step 1, but like learning how to take action to change it is the rest of the story. So we'll come back to that. But first, I want to look at these 3 costs of drive. So the first hidden cost is what I think of as constant internal urgency, right? There's something pushing you forward, like a hand on your back, right? But it's coming from the inside. When drive is your operating system, everything feels like it needs attention. Everything feels urgent, even things that are not urgent, right? We get our wires crossed on what's urgent, what really needs attention right now, and what objectively is fine and can wait till tomorrow. And when everything feels urgent, it is very difficult to rest. It is very difficult to be present, right? You're at the dinner table, but you're not at the dinner table. You're on vacation and you're only half on vacation. You're in the conversation, but you're also already thinking about what you're doing after the conversation. That is a really important cost of drive left unchecked. Low grade stress starts to feel very normal. It's like the baseline setting. You're just stressed all the time. And it feels so normal that you stop noticing it. You stop identifying it as an issue. You think this is just what it looks like, right? I'm kind of always going to be overtaxed. And then recovery gets really shortchanged because you don't do it. There is such little recovery. I've taught this principle for years that recovery needs to be equal and opposite. Whatever your level of exertion is, you need to meet it with an equal and opposite level of recovery. And when you are in overdrive, you don't do that, right? And you know it, like your system knows that you're not feeling rested even when you've technically just rested. Right? This is why you can be on a beach chair in a beautiful place and you still feel like you're running behind. That's that operating system running in the background. You never turned it off. You just moved it to the beach and it kept running, right? Okay, so that's the first cost, is this constant internal urgency that just feels like it will never go away. I'm wondering if you're recognizing yourself in this. The second one is, I think the second one is a little more subtle, and I think it's one of the most expensive ones actually over time. And here's what it is. When drive is your operating system, what will happen is you are in this constant state of optimization, but you're optimizing the problems that are right in front of you, right? Like Pac-Man eating the pellets. Whatever is right in front of you, you're like, I got to get this done. You never really stop to think, should I even be doing this? Right? Drive is an optimizer. It's like you're squeezing more into your calendar. You're getting faster at your systems. You find a new way to batch tasks or like streamline your morning routine. But the friction doesn't go away because you're working in the system, right? You're not really stepping back and looking at working on the system, right? Would be the classic way of saying this. You're not looking at, am I even doing the right things? You're optimizing for the wrong variable. Like you're optimizing for speed, but speed to do something that might not even be serving you anymore, right? So you really want to have a mechanism to step back and look at the bigger picture and say, am I doing the right things? We say this in business all the time. Are you working in the business or on the business, right? As the owner of a business, I'm thinking about, I can be doing tasks that are keeping the business running, or I can be asking myself leadership questions like, should we even be doing this anymore? Because if you don't have that ability to step back, you can like win the day, but lose the game, right? You're busy. You're taking little frictions out or getting better at tolerating frictions. You're getting incrementally better at lots of things because you're just pushing through, but you're not ever stepping back to redesign it, to really architect a life that actually fits where you are right now, that doesn't have as much friction inherently, right? That requires a totally different kind of a pause. And that pause is one that drive by nature doesn't make much room for. We just aren't making room for it. And then there's a third cost. And I think this third cost is the one that I feel the most personally. I think it's the one that we're the least likely to talk about because it's the hardest to admit. But drive unchecked, undirected drive, right? Overdrive can quietly cost you your relationships. It doesn't happen all at once. It doesn't happen in a big dramatic way often, but very quietly. It happens like this. Your answer to, hey, do you want to get together, is no, or, oh, I can't today, or let's do it soon, so many times that people eventually stop asking. They're not angry. They've just learned that you're not going to say yes, right? You always have something else that you have to do. It happens when you'll know it because someone who loves you or likes you, one of your friends, will start to preface their invitations with, you're probably too busy for this, but, And then they'll say what the thing is, if they're saying it at all anymore, right? They are not trying to guilt you into anything. They are just protecting themselves from the answer they've started to expect. I know this one personally, and deeply. My own mother, who I talk to multiple times a day, I want to be very clear about that, will sometimes say, you're probably too busy to fill in the blank, have lunch, do this thing. And that preface really tells you something, right? It's not about the lunch. It's about the pattern that she's observed over time. The sense that for somebody who loves me deeply, I can sometimes seem unavailable even when I'm technically there. So no one is going to come right out and tell you, hey, your drive is getting in the way of our relationship. I just don't think people, that's pretty brave. What they'll say is, I know you're so busy. And what they mean underneath that, what they feel, even if they'd never say it, is, I think there's something that matters more to you than I do, right? I think about that weekend that my best friend came to visit. Having spent a whole year traveling around the world, think about the stories she had. She came to see me, and I spent way too much of it in my office, finishing a briefing for a vice president who has since retired and definitely does not remember that presentation at all. Candidly, nor do I. I don't remember what it was about. I don't remember what the big issue was that we were briefing him on. I have no recollection of it, but I've never forgotten, right, what I missed out on. So I'm not telling you that to beat myself up. I've made peace with it. She and I have talked about it, but I am telling you that because it's the clearest picture that I have of what it looks like when drive is making your decisions for you. Would I ever consciously, right, really consciously have been like, I am going to consciously miss out on this weekend with my friend to do this PowerPoint presentation at the time? I don't think so. I don't think I consciously would have made that decision, but I unconsciously made it. Right? That pattern of behavior was running so strongly in the background that I just didn't know how to modulate it. So what do we do with this? Right? This is a pretty important reframe. If you see yourself in these stories, like you have a personal cost to yourself of that urgency that never turns off, that feeling of like, I can never stop. You have potentially the fact that you're optimizing for the wrong things, right? If you're not pausing long enough to even look at am I even moving in the right direction? And then you have this relationship cost to grapple with. So what do we do about that? Well, the goal is not to eliminate drive, right? It's certainly not to have less ambition. It's really to learn, I think, to direct it. Drive, again, is a gift. It is so powerful when you have it in you. And when it's intentional, you're choosing where to point it. Right? You're deciding this sprint, this is going to get my full focus. And then you pause, right? And then you stop and then you rest. Not like you kind of half pause, but really you keep going. Like you actually are giving yourself these breaks. You sit down at a kitchen table with your family and you eat a meal and you're actually there, right? Or you sit on a porch and you call a friend and you listen fully. You're not doing email at the same time, right? That's the skill. And it is a skill. It doesn't come naturally if you're wired this way, right? But it's modulation. It's moving in and out of drive, sprinting when you need to sprint and stopping when the sprint is done, right? So I get given a hard time sometimes about the fact that balance is in the name of my brand. People are like, balance, what is that? And I think this is part of how I think about it. It's being able to shift in and out of, speed. I'm going to be in full drive and then I'm going to hit the brakes for a while. And then I'm going to sprint and then I'm going to hit the brakes. That ability to sort of stay on your toes, that's how I think about it. And I'll tell you that what makes this hard in life, what makes it hard is the culture that you're in is rewarding that constant go. Until you cross that invisible line, drive is a behavior that is rewarded, right? We want to see, wow, look at how much she gets done. I don't know how she does that. I don't know how she gets all those things done. And what people don't always see when they're observing that from the outside is what it feels like on the inside. And when you've crossed that invisible line, you feel it first, and then other people start to see some of the external symptoms. So getting out of this overdrive pattern requires a new structure, right? It requires learning a new kind of way. Like imagine that you were a marathon runner and you had a particular stride, like this is your gait, this is your stride, this is how you're running. And then you realize this isn't working and you hire a running coach and they come in and they're like, okay, we're going to do a gait analysis and we're going to really literally retrain your stride so that you can have better results. It's kind of like that, right? You needed a place to practice operating differently where you can build some trust and some faith that learning to modulate your drive is not going to bring your life down, right? You're not going to all of a sudden not have career goals met. You're not going to get judged for this. I think we have so much fear that if we just pull back that drive at all ever for even one day, like our whole life is going to collapse around us. And that's just not been my experience. So this really is the purpose of having the coaching circle, right? Taking it from being able to take these ideas from I've heard an idea. And look, I'm glad you're here. It's not nothing that you're here listening to this podcast episode and getting the insight, right? Kind of feeling your perspective shift as you hear me talk about this. But the shift from that to actually practicing a different way, actually building a new way of operating, that takes support, right? There has to be like a structure around you while you are practicing new ways of doing things because they're going to feel really awkward at first. You're going to worry that this is going to blow up my life. And unless you have somebody there who's seen it before and kind of knows how to continue adjusting your stride, so to speak, and unless you're with other people who are doing the same thing and they're kind of awkwardly trying at first too until they get good at it, it's really hard to sustain. Okay. So last week, I introduced the coaching circle. I'm going to continue to remind you about it through the podcast because that's the place where we are going to build the skills together, right? And we're going to take them out into the world and practice them. And we're going to come back and report on how it went and get coached on how to make it go better. So the first live masterclass in the month of May is happening on May 7th. That is very soon if you're listening to this episode as it drops. And that's where we're going to begin. We're going to begin with the first live masterclass, and the first coaching call is going to follow a couple of weeks after that. Every month, we're going to tackle one skill inside of the coaching circle. And we're going to stay really focused on that so that we don't get ahead of ourselves. And then the next month, we'll take a new one. Right. And over the course of, say, the next year, we will move through the entire Brilliant Balance skill set. Like there are a series of them. They work as a collection. As you get introduced to them one by one and have a chance to practice them, that's what starts to create real and lasting change in the way you run your life. Okay. So if you heard me talk about it last week and you haven't had a chance to join, you can do that now. It's at brilliant-balance.com/coaching circle. I think we also have a pop-up on the homepage at this point. Again, if you're listening as this episode goes live. And I want you to check it out. We have kept this very accessible. So I am really excited about the people who are already in and looking forward to welcoming you in as well. Look, I have no doubt that drive got you this far, right? You have some level of drive to be this far in your life. If you're listening to a podcast with this title, it's probably already speaking to you. So let's make sure your drive is taking you where you actually want to go. That is all for today, my friends. Till next time, let's be brilliant.